Happy Wednesday, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live. Schmeelk, Medow, you, 201-939-4513. We'll try to get to your calls early and often today as the Giants wrap up mandatory minicamp. Paul Dottino's out there covering the rest of practice. He'll keep an eye on what's said after practice by some of the players. You had player media availabilities yesterday. You had assistant coach availabilities as well that we've had. It's been a busy couple of days, Mr. Medow. How are you?
I'm doing very well. How about yourself?
Doing okay, and this is kind of the end of the spring. The most important thing always is that you walk out of this with everyone healthy. That's the number one priority thing. There's no contact in minicamp, so this is really just trying to get your first installation of the playbook in. Brian Daboll talked about this yesterday, Lance, where you want to walk through everything, get everything in. They did a lot of situational stuff yesterday and today where the guys have absorbed everything. So then when they come back in 7 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever it is, they'll have that second go of that installation, and they can go a little bit faster because they've all seen it for the first time.
Well, especially the new guys who weren't here last season. I think Brian Daboll was also talking about, John, that there's a foundation already built, right, in-house, because a lot of the guys that are coming back, they've already been within the offensive systems and the defensive systems. Okay, so now you brought a bunch of new players in. You use the offseason for them to get comfortable, and then to your point, you want to be off to the races once training camp starts. So it's playing catch-up a little bit for the newbies, whereas, I mean, just think about where this team was at this time last year compared to this year, and that was something also that Daboll reflected on. They're that much more comfortable, but the car doesn't slow down when new players come aboard, right? They have to jump on as it continues to move, so that's what they're trying to fine-tune, and guys like Darren Waller and Bobby Okereke on the defensive side of the ball in particular, you hope once training camp starts, it's a perfect language for them after they fine-tuned it over the last few months in terms of meetings as well as some of the work, obviously, on the field.
Yeah, and look, it's a matter of getting the new guys to where the old guys were, right? I think that's part of this. Luckily, the Giants brought in some pretty savvy and smart vets, so I think they'll be able to absorb this system pretty well. It's getting the rookies where you need them to be. And I think it's important for fans to realize, because there's going to be a lot of reporting of what's happening at these practices. We do our practice reports here on Giants.com. And Brian Daboll has said this publicly, and I just want to reinforce it, that jobs are not won or lost in the spring. This is a learning part. This is an absorption part. This is a kind of see where the guys are thing. But right now, you're not really competing. The competition starts when you come back in late July, and then the pads come on in August.
You're testing as I point to my head, the intellect of your players during this time period. That's what you're getting out of it from a coaching standpoint. You're evaluating them in the meeting rooms. You're seeing them then translate that to the field, even though it's against air, which is what Brian Daboll and most coaches will tell you. You know, the offensive linemen, they're lining up and they're pushing through air. They're not contacting anybody. What are you supposed to know about the physicality of John Michael Schmitz when he's just going through the motions? I mean, just to give our audience an idea of what happens during the course of the spring. And that's CBA rules and regulations, okay, that the union had negotiated with the league. And this has been going on for the last few years. That's why, to Daboll's point, when they have some padded practice sessions during training camp, then you'll really see whether or not some of these rookies can get on the field immediately and make a significant impact. But at this point, you just want all the new players to absorb the scheme. Yeah. So that they can then combine that physicality with the scheme once training camp starts up. That's the goal.
Hey, look, and that's real football. I had a chance to do a bunch of player interviews. They're going to be on the Giants Huddle podcast over the next 7 weeks until we come back at the end of end of July rather. And, you talk to these guys and, you ask them, and, you mentioned the offensive and defensive line, but it applies to the wide receivers and the cornerbacks too. Like Jalen Hyatt stressed to me in my interview with him that, look, I want to be an outside receiver, and I got to work on my releases, but you can't work
How do
on
you do that?
You can't work on your releases against players in camp, in OTAs and minicamp, because there's no contact. Deonte Banks, he likes to get physical with guys and bump them and grind them at the line of scrimmage. You know what he can't do? He can't do that here. So, and on the other hand, I was talking to Darnay Holmes, and Darnay said, look, my big goal this offseason, and I didn't even ask him the question, he brought this up on his own, his big goal this offseason is to be less handsy. He got flagged a lot last year, especially at the end of games and the end of halves in 2-minute situations, which can kill you because not only do you lose the yardage, but you stop the clock too.
The Tennessee game, that helped set up their potential game-winning field goal.
I think he had 2 or 3 on that drive, if I remember right. So, for a guy like him, he termed the spring as an opportunity because he has to cover without having any contact, and you can't have hands-on. So it does limit what you can do, but it also provides you an opportunity to work on certain things that maybe you're trying to get better at.
No, I think that's a great point. I'm actually, just out of curiosity, I'm bringing the breakdown of penalties up because I monitor that. Holmes had 7, and that was the second most on the team last season, just to put things in perspective.
Let me guess who I think had the most.
Well, the guy that had the most is really not fair because I assign it to him based on sometimes things that go against the offensive team. So
Daniel
Holmes,
Jones?
correct, yes. So, but once again, that's just for bookkeeping purposes. You could chuckle all you want. It's just for
No,
bookkeeping purposes.
I'm not laughing. I think that's fair. I get it.
So Holmes, if you want to go guy on an island, Darnay had the most penalties.
So, like every delay of game gets put on Daniel Jones.
Correct, yes.
Right.
Well, I mean, listen, the quarterback, to me, he's
it.
responsible for that. He's got to get the guys at the line, and you got to hike the ball. So I'm very harsh, okay? There are no shortcuts when it comes to assignments.
Who would I think be the third most penalized player? It's a good question.
Oh, we could have brought this game up earlier in the offseason. I'm disappointed in myself.
You could.
I didn't think you were going to take this and
This is
jump
fun.
on the ship
All right,
and
my
go for a stroll here.
Is that the third most penalized player?
We had a tie, by the way.
Ooh. Okay.
So you have to come up with not one name, but 2 names.
All right. I think one of them.
That's the only way you get this right.
I think one of them is going to be on the offensive line.
That would be correct.
Okay. I'm halfway there.
Now, do you want to actually roll the dice?
Evan Neal.
That is correct.
Okay.
I'm moving my laptop.
No,
over
I
a little
didn't
bit.
see anything.
So, okay.
All right. So that's 1. And how many did they have? Did he have?
He had 6.
6.
Yes. By the way, these are accepted penalties, just for
Only
clarification.
accepted
Yes, these are only
penalties.
accepted penalties.
Okay.
I should have at least specified that.
Now, who would be the next most penalized player? I don't think it would be anyone. They had so many moving parts in the secondary. Adoree Jackson wouldn't have had that many. I don't think any of the safeties would have had that many. So I think both guys are on the offensive line.
Well, you were in the right territory, but the wrong side of the ball.
Oh, defensive
Yes,
line.
defense. I think there's going to be a surprise for most people in terms of the other individual.
Is it Dexter?
Yes.
Because I know he had a couple of offsides and he had a
roughing.
couple of the roughings.
Correct.
2
Yep.
or 3 of those.
Exactly. So that's how he got
Interesting.
up. So he and Evan Neal were tied for
Okay.
second with 6.
I'm not
Yeah.
surprised by that.
Do you want to go for the third and finish off the
Oh,
trifecta?
jeez. How many did that player have?
That player had 5.
Is that an offensive lineman?
That is an offensive lineman.
Is he still on the team?
No. That's going to give it away.
Nick
I
Gates.
shouldn't have.
No,
No, that's not Nick
no,
Gates.
not Nick
Oh, okay.
Gates.
No, not Nick Gates.
Not Nick Gates. Oh, Feliciano.
Right positions, just
Feliciano.
wrong. Yes, Feliciano.
Shoot, I should have
So.
known it was Feliciano. That was.
Would you like to name the 3 guys that had 4 penalties?
No, I do not. I'm done. I think I did pretty well.
No, not bad.
I think I did
Yes.
okay.
Jury's out, they say. Pat
Yeah.
on the back worthy.
I think that was okay.
Yes.
Yeah, but look, those are the type of things that
Well, and that was the
work
point.
out.
Correct. Yeah, and that's why I went to look at the penalties because not to say that Darnay Holmes doesn't remember what happened the previous season, but there's validity behind him wanting to work on his hands when you wind up with 7 penalties. And you could say the same thing about guys who just want to embrace the physicality like a Jalen Hyatt so he gets to understand what life is like in the NFL. It's just unfortunate. And once again, this is nothing against the Giants coaching staff. It's nothing against the Giants. This is union negotiated rules, which you cannot navigate.
And if you try to navigate them,
There are consequences. Correct. Well, that's why teams don't try to navigate. They're very careful in terms of
teams get
how
OTA
they go about it. Yeah.
practices taken away from them all the time.
The Patriots, the Cowboys we've seen.
The Ravens have
Yeah,
had a
we've
bunch
seen a
taken
lot of
over the
teams.
years.
Yeah, lose OTAs. Sure.
Because of contact.
100%.
Rules are rules, man.
Yeah.
That's just
Well,
the
I
way
mean,
it goes.
the old story is, John, what's the purpose of the union and the Players Association negotiating it and then it's not enforced?
Yeah, that's correct.
There'd be no point.
Yes.
Why do you even have it on the paper?
And trust me,
It's not even worth it.
and the players, especially the veteran players, know what the rules are.
Oh, do they ever? Yes.
So,
the rookies, they're anxious to get out. They'd run over anybody in their way.
Oh, and like the young players trying to get like a starting job or whatever, they would contact, hit, they do whatever they want now.
Bite at people's kneecaps.
But you have like that 8th-year defensive tackle, and all of a sudden he's like getting hit by offensive lineman. You don't think he's calling the union rep, and he's like,
no. He's like, excuse me, page 3, subtitle 1, subsection XYZ says that on a Wednesday when the wind blows north to south, I am not allowed to use my right hand and my pinky finger make contact with the other player.
And I believe that defensive meeting was about 13 seconds too long.
Yes,
sir,
well,
so.
my clock, yep. No. Lunch, we're supposed to have the lunch break. Got to get the meat and potatoes.
All right, I actually wanted to jump to a topic, but Hugo in New Jersey wants to talk about it. So we'll go to Hugo first. And, guys, we have some open lines. Give us a call, 201-939-4513. And that kind of blanch us to our second topic here. Hugo, what's up?
Oh, good afternoon, guys.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, I want to start off the call by talking about the interview yesterday with Brandon Brown. And, you can't listen to that interview and just not come away impressed with how thoughtful and analytical he is about a variety of topics. And,
smart guy.
A lot of experience, too.
And he definitely emphasizes, the collaborative aspects, so everyone being on the same page, which is something that's good to hear. I guess after hearing that interview, I fear that at some point retention of that kind of talent is going to be a challenge, but at the same time, there's been a lot of talent added to the front office. So,
hey, look, Hugo, here's the bottom line. If the Giants win a lot of games, people are going to come after the Giants guys, whether it's coaches or front office staff. If the Giants don't win a lot of games, they're probably not.
Well, look at the two assistant coaches that got interviews last year.
That's how this is going to go.
Yeah.
Is that fair? No, because I'm sure whether the Giants win 7 games this year or 10 games this year, it probably has a zero reflection on the job a guy like Brandon Brown did, but that's just how the league tends to work.
Yeah, you just try to pull people that are attractive because they're associated with winning, clearly.
Yeah, it's sort of the self-correcting mechanism that leads to a lot of parity, but it is what it is. Anyhow, so he's sort of not a frontline guy who meets with the media a lot. Obviously, Joe and Dates are the front people.
Yep.
One guy I'd be interested in hearing from. I know all the coaches have been interviewed in the offseason, is Laura Young, because Brian Dable refers to her a lot. I guess he calls her LY.
Yep, LY. Yep.
And she almost seems like a secret weapon. So she's sort of an unassuming person in the background. I'd like to kind of hear from her.
Yeah, Hugo, if you go, I think it's Pierce. If you can find the date for me on the Her Playbook podcast when the Laura Young interview was posted, but we do have an interview with her from last year at some point.
You do? Okay.
If you go to the Giants podcast, Giants.com/podcast, you click on Her Playbook. There is an interview down there with her that's probably around 20 minutes long, Pearson, something like that. So 15 minutes long. So go check it out, Hugo, if you're interested.
Okay, very good. Just like to, one of the things Brandon did talk about was how excited they were about the draft class and their maturity level. One of the things I really like about this draft class is that they all seem to love football. And I'll just hit on each of the players and sort of, some of the things they've said or some of the actions they've taken. We all know that Deonte Banks is a man of a few words, but I sort of chuckled during his first interview when he was asked about what sights he wanted to see in New York, and he just sort of said, "I'm here to play football." That's sort of all I wanted to hear from him.
It's funny, Hugo, you mentioned that. I was talking to somebody on the sideline today, Matt Sytak, who writes for the website, and you were talking about, and we're like, we think Deonte, and he was telling me, Deonte Banks, I think he's a chance to really be a star. I go, I think he could be a star too, but not like that I'm out there going to events and I'm going to be seen star. I'm a really good football player, but I'm going to fly under the radar in the social scene type guy. That just seems to be the type of guy he is to me.
Well, I guess that you got to keep in mind these guys are young, and I do remember, for example, when Jason Pierre-Paul was drafted. At first, they kept him off the media circuit, and then eventually, as he matured, he got more articulate.
JPP was very unpolished when he showed up in that regard. That's
exactly.
And he also didn't have a lot of football experience too. Remember when he came to the Giants?
That's true. So that's Deonte Banks. Everyone sort of knows John Michael Schmidt has high football intelligence. And Alex Boone, who he worked with, confirmed that, and I think Bobby Johnson in some of his interviews has confirmed that as well. And I got to say, I take a lot of comfort. Jalen Hyatt set a goal about putting on weight, and it seems like he's making good progress. That's a pretty good indicator to me that a young man like that can set a goal, and it's not just talk. He really works to achieve it. And I think he's the kind of guy who takes the criticisms to heart. So I would imagine that he'll take sort of the same focused approach to his route running, because those are the two things, his physicality and route running, that likely dropped him out of the first round into the third round. I think he has a bit of a chip on his shoulder, although he comes across as a very humble guy.
Absolutely. Hugo, good stuff, man.
Yeah, appreciate the phone call.
Appreciate it. Yeah, and another guy that was trying to put on weight, I talked to Cordell Flott in that interview series. He said he's up to 180, which is a lot heavier than when he first came into the league. Was he 165 when he got drafted or something ridiculous
slim
like that?
guy just by the nature of things. Yeah.
So a couple of things Brandon Brown said, and then we'll get to you, Peter, in the Florida Keys. And again, give us a call, 201-939-4513. We have some time to talk today. A few things that Brandon Brown said I thought, Lance, that was interesting. One, to Hugo's point, and I will confirm this, I had not had a chance to talk one-on-one with the rookies yet because we're doing all our draft coverage, and Madeline does the rookie interviews after they get drafted. So I hadn't had a chance to talk to any of the guys. I talked to all of them. And I do think this front office has a personality type of the type of guys they want in the building, and all the guys were impressive in different ways. Like, Deonte Banks is very different than John Michael Schmitz, and they express themselves differently. But both guys, they really like football, and they're football smart, and you could tell that they're good guys that care about what they do. And I think, that's the type of stuff that when we're talking about these prospects that we can't judge because we don't talk to them. We don't get to, have one-on-one meetings with them. We don't have 30 visits and all that sort of stuff. But I do think they do a good job of weeding out the guys that could have, I don't want to use this term, off-the-field issues, because that tends to make people think of, criminals and things like that.
Lack of adaptation, I think, is maybe the best way to go about it.
And I think guys that have very strong intangibles that I think, help reflect and will help them become better football players in the long term.
Well, I mean, listen, there's guys that can have a social life and be committed to football. I think it's extremely misleading when we say that they have to live, sleep, drink, go to the bathroom, and it's all football 24/7. You can have a balanced life. I mean, case in point, all of us have careers and we have personal lives.
I mean, Pearson's out clubbing every night. He still shows up and works the show.
I didn't want to name any people.
Nikola Jokic just wants to get back to his horses.
Exactly. I mean, he has his priorities straight. He said he wanted to get the finals over so he could go home.
Yeah,
okay?
He was like, when's the parade? I'm sorry, I can't.
I got to go home.
He better show up to that parade, by the way.
I'm sure he will.
Not for nothing.
Well, listen, they're going to give him a parade in Serbia. If you've already seen some clips of skyscrapers, they have his images on.
He's not named president by the time he gets back there.
So he could skip the Nuggets parade. Trust me, the parade in Serbia is going to be 10 times bigger. I guarantee
they
you.
had Djokovic win, too. Serbia's on fire right now.
They did.
That's right, yeah.
I wonder if that parade they're going to give Joker's brothers their own float or bus.
They may.
And just say, guys, have fun.
They may give the two of them crowns as well with the way that they've been such popular individuals on the NBA court. You saw them carrying Michael Malone after the NBA Finals victory. They were all over the place. I'm surprised he hasn't named them assistants. But getting back to the point at hand here, I don't think you can just generalize and think that guys can't go out and about and enjoy the environment. That's all I'm saying. I think there's plenty of players that find the balance.
Well, and that's the thing, that's kind of my point, right? Like Hyatt, Banks, and Schmitz are all very different personality-wise.
Yep.
But they all just seem like solid guys that you trust to take things seriously and do things the right way.
Sure.
And, I bet you Hyatt will be out there more than the other two guys just because I think that's his personality. But that to your point, that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
So I'm with you.
Well, and I believe from conversations that the players have had in passing, I think both Banks and Hyatt said they've never been to New York, if I'm correct.
Yeah,
or maybe they were in New York for a game in passing. Now, remember, Banks is an East Coast guy. He's from Maryland. So, I mean, it's not like New York City is something that's earth-shattering. Whereas Hyatt's not necessarily an East Coast guy, so maybe it's a little bit different than him. And as far as the rest of the draft class is concerned, I mean, all of those guys, they just seem well-grounded. But you have to understand, John, and maybe it's a little bit different for the latter picks, but players like Jordan Riley, who played for numerous schools, Trey Hawkins and Owens, who were at the community college level, they're in no position to take anything for granted.
No, of course not.
Right? Maybe you could say if you're a high draft pick, you have confidence, you have a chip on your shoulder. So maybe there's a concern about taking things for granted and thinking that, it's going to be red carpet treatment. But to each their own, I don't get the sense that any of the players that the Giants selected high in this draft have that persona. And I also think a big part of that, John, is the coaches they were around at the collegiate level. Let's not overlook that. For example, Eric Gray was with DeMarco Murray, who played in the NFL. John Michael Schmitz, Alex Boone wasn't his coach. We had him on this program, but Alex Boone is a polished veteran offensive lineman. And you look at Deonte Banks, was around Michael Loxley, who we spoke with, who has a wealth of coaching experience, who was around Nick Saban at Alabama. He was with Brian Dable, and the same thing with Jalen Hyatt. That also influences players too. And I think that's what you're seeing a product of.
All right, 201-939-4513. I got a couple more points on the stuff Brandon Brown said, but I want to get to the calls.
Yep.
We got a couple people online. Let's do it. Let's go to Peter in the Florida Keys. He's up next. Hi, Peter.
Hey, guys. How you doing today?
We're great.
Doing all right.
Awesome. So I've been at a conference the last 4 days, so I haven't really been up to speed with the Saquon talks. And
there is no speed to be up to, Peter. It is status quo. They're working on it, and they hope to have something done. There's really there really isn't much else to report. And they tried to get Brian Dable to do more reporting on that yesterday, and then that was not going to happen.
He's just worried about today. That was his response.
Okay.
Plus, nothing's going to really drastically change because July 17th, is the deadline.
Deadlines make deals.
They do indeed.
Right. So I have a 6-hour drive ahead of me, so if you would indulge me on a question.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
So say, and sorry, Lance, it's a hypothetical deal, but I'm just
we'll survive.
Yes. I know you love that stuff.
Lance loves hypotheticals.
Sure.
That and depth, exactly. Anyway.
Yes,
so,
hypotheticals
July
and depth.
7th.
Hypothetical depth is even better. I hope your hypothetical includes depth. That's the crown. That's the icing on the cake.
And the third place one is backup quarterbacks.
Well, that's part of depth. So that's a
fair.
little overkill.
That's a good point.
You see, you tried to give me a zinger, and you came up short on that. But yes, please. This is a tremendous build-up to this hypothetical here.
Musical chairs is his favorite game, though. That's for sure.
Yes, that's what I do in my own personal time. Okay. So now we have set the stage.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you. Appreciate that. You're fine, my man. So, say we're in camp, Saquon. July 17th happens. A deal isn't done. He could always sign that franchise tag. My question for you guys, and I don't know the logistics of this, what would be the leverage or the benefit of him sitting out the season and not signing that franchise tag and not getting that $10.1 million?
Zero?
Yeah, there'd be no leverage.
I can't understand why all these flipping reports are saying, oh, well, if he doesn't sign, he's not going to sign, he's going to lose out.
Hey, look, the only thing,
$10.1
Peter,
million.
he could do, all right, he will never sit out the full season, because if he sits out the full season, he doesn't get an accrued season. The Giants get his franchise tag next year. So
and he loses out on $10 million guaranteed $million.
Go and look. And by the way, this is the same thing and this is not just to Saquon. This is the same thing we said on the show about Le'Veon Bell 3 or 4 years ago, right? So we're being consistent. The thing that he could do that would obviously hurt the Giants, and I don't think it would be good for him either, but is that he stays out. What week would he have to come back to get an accrued season?
I want to say
9, 10.
Yeah, 9, 10. I can look it up.
He could sit out the first 8 weeks or so, Pete, and then just show up in week 9 or 10 so he plays, so he's on the roster long enough to get the accrued season. And then that's really not good for anybody, though, which is why, and this is just my opinion, in one way, shape, or form, whether it's on a long-term deal on the franchise tag, Saquon Barkley will be playing a lot of football games for the Giants this year. It's just a matter of how and when that goes on.
Listen, Le'Veon Bell was the guinea pig, okay? I think every player who may have been contemplating sitting out an entire season learned from him, and they came to the realization Bell never got the money back.
Nope, never.
Even though the argument was, oh, well, this is great. There's not going to be as much wear and tear on him, right? He's saving himself. Who cares? You're still losing out on all the money that you were guaranteed.
And Bell, I think, this year came out and said publicly that he made a mistake.
Exactly.
And he regretted it.
So you have the evidence. If you're an agent and a player, you have somebody that went through it to come to the realization, yeah, I don't really think that's practical. And as far as the time period that you were talking about, Peter, I brought this up, I think, on yesterday's show, but it's worth repeating. Orlando Brown Jr. was tagged by the Chiefs last year, the offensive lineman who's now with the Bengals, and he didn't show up until maybe midway through training camp towards the latter part, and he signed his tag and he played under it for that 1 year. So, I mean, once again, I don't know what Saquon's thinking. I haven't had personal conversations with him, and we're really going down the hypothetical road, but you can see a player, when it's all said and done, they may not be there for day one of training camp, but they're eventually going to show up because, once again, they're not going to sacrifice that guaranteed money regardless of the position they play.
Makes complete sense. So, post July 17th, is there any trade ramifications? They're allowed to trade him. There's no...
He would have to sign the tag and then be traded. He cannot be traded before he signs the tag. And the problem then is that after he gets traded when signing the tag, he can still not sign a long-term deal with that new team. So
Gotcha.
If there's going to be a long-term deal on a trade, which, again, I don't think anybody wants that to happen or it's going to happen, that would also have to happen before that July 17th deadline.
So if he doesn't sign the tag, does that mean he's not property of the Giants anymore?
They have his rights, but he's not under contract.
He's not under contract, yeah.
Correct.
I mean, there's a placeholder for him right now with respect to the salary cap. The franchise tag is there, so the Giants can operate from a financial standpoint, but, which is what you were alluding to, until he actually signs the tag, no, he's not under contract with respect to the active roster for the Giants. That's more of a reason why, by the way, on a related note, the whole narrative and storyline about him not showing up for mandatory minicamp, well, a player can't show up for mandatory minicamp until he signs the tag because he's technically not part of the team. Those are just the logistics of the CBA.
Gotcha. And one last thing. I'm driving from Clearwater to the Keys, and I'm going through Miami. I didn't realize Pearson was such a big club guy. So, Pearson, if you have any club suggestions, let me know.
I've never been to Miami, and I really don't club. They just like to spit lies.
No. Well, Pearson knows the club scene in Massachusetts. So if you want to take an alternative route and go north, he'd be more than happy to fill you in on what the Bostonians are up to.
Gotcha. I was playing a shoulda, woulda, coulda game. So cool. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Now, in all seriousness, if you want to know about some golf courses to hit up, that's something you could ask Pearson. He's all over that.
Week 10 is the deadline for players to sign the tag in order to play and collect game checks.
There you go.
Just looked it up. So that would be a scenario where a player really wants to wait things out. But, once again, you have to wonder, and this is an extension of this hypothetical conversation, if you're Barkley and you're, let's say, playing this season under the tag, you don't get a long-term deal done. Does it hurt you, John, if you don't play a full season, especially if you want to present your stock?
Yeah, I don't know.
Not to say that he can become a free agent because the Giants could always tag him 2 consecutive years, but do you not have as much appeal if you only wind up suiting up for 7 or 8 games?
I think if he's really good in the final few games of that, probably not. But look, look, Saquon Barkley loves his team. He loves his teammates. I don't see him sitting out.
No, I'm with you.
I just don't think that's a realistic thing here. But who knows? We'll see. You never know with these things. Things change quickly, and guys do things that are unexpected. So
they do, but I think we all need to take a step back and come to the realization. And listen, we do a program 24/7. Around this time of the year, there's not a lot going on,
and look,
right? And people need stuff to talk about and write about.
And look,
I get that.
And our opinion on this is why we don't talk about it a lot here. Because the Giants have his rights. That's not going to change, and he's going to play. So,
well, no, 100%.
Whatever.
But John, also in fairness, and this is why I like to look at history, how many times have we seen a player be given the tag and he doesn't reach a deal by the time the tag happens all the time? And haven't we heard guys threaten, I'm unhappy, this is ridiculous, I'm disrespected.
And they play.
So why are we going crazy?
No, and honestly, and to our listeners' credit, I don't think the listeners to this show have been going crazy.
I'm not saying they are.
Yeah, and there's people on the outside that I think get wrapped up in this sort of stuff, which I get. Look, it's important. He's one of the most important players in the team. I get it, but I think they'll figure it out. Saquon's a smart guy. He's an adult. He loves to play. He loves the Giants. He loves his teammates here. All that stuff. I think it'll get figured out one way or the other, and he'll be here playing.
Do you think Wilson is handling this
no,
calmly?
I do not. Is he on the line? Okay, well that's good.
Don't. But you know what happens when you bring up callers' names, Pearson. Okay,
look what you did.
You're a glutton for punishment. Okay.
All right.
There's another guy guilty of that, and I will not mention him.
Let's go to Marty in Manahawk, and he's up next. Hi, Marty.
Hey, John. How are you doing?
What's up?
John, I'm a little more optimistic.
I don't get a hello,
about
Marty.
Saquon.
What happens? I'm chopped liver here.
No. Sorry, Lance.
No, I'm okay. I'll survive. No, I was saying, John gets a greeting. I don't know what I have to do to get a greeting. That's all. I was a little insulted, but it's okay. Yeah.
Forgive me. That's
Be a little less
very
grumpy.
disrespectful, Godfather.
It's okay. No problem. We won't put you in the doghouse as a result of that.
Okay. Hey, I'm a little more optimistic now. I was reading one of Patty Trainor's articles today, and she seems to have some pretty good information. She talks to somebody there, and I have a feeling that it sounds like the only thing that might be holding up the Saquon deal is the guaranteed money. It's not the APY. It's guaranteed money at this point. And,
well, Marty, in fairness, that is usually the toughest bridge to cross on these things. So that's not a small. Again, I have no idea if that's the issue or not. I'm not commenting on that, but. Guaranteed money on a contract is usually literally the most important thing that gets negotiated in these contracts. So that's not a small thing, is my point.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either. But I think that's what they have to work out, and I think you'll see Saquon in there sooner than later.
Well, I mean, listen, I think everybody would love to see that have come to fruition with respect to the negotiations. I mean, with the respect to guaranteed money. I think you could say that, Marty, about every player's contract. I don't think it's just necessarily the running backs because, what happens is you see years, 4-year deal, $50 million, and then, the last year the team could get rid of easily. That's why average annual salary is a nice number, which is attractive if you're doing the rankings and you want to see who's first, second, or third. Players and agents, if you ask them, they're much more concerned about what is guaranteed upon signing that the player or my client will actually walk away with.
Yeah, and based on how the contract is structured, when is the first time the team can get out of this contract and then what money disappears?
Yeah. Well, that's why, John, to your point, if you tell me a player's making $16 million a year, is he going to be here for the third and the fourth year of the contract? What difference does it make?
And sometimes in those third and fourth years of the contract, they might be making like 23 or 24. So they only actually make 12 or 13 in the first two. So then that's to your point, the 16 really doesn't matter.
Yeah, and so that's why, circling back to Marty's point, it's definitely the guaranteed money does a lot of the heavy lifting.
I mean, I think even the Daniel Jones contract is an example of that, right? Like that last year, the cap number is fairly large. So it's going to be tough for him to play under that cap number that year. So if you take the first 3 years, and there's very little guaranteed money left in that last year. So you take the first 3 years, it averages out to about 37.5, and then you figure it out from there. That's it. All right, Marty?
Okay, fellas, sounds good.
All right.
Appreciate the call, man. 201-939-4513, 201-939-4513. Hey, folks, don't forget to go subscribe to the Giants Huddle podcast. We got some good stuff up on there right now. Jonathan Casillas in our little Players Corner. I had a chance to talk to Giants wide receiver Isaiah Hodgins. Check that out. My interview with Sam Monson's there from last week. Lance's interview with DeMarco Murray, Eric Gray's running backs coach in Oklahoma. We're going to have P.J. Fleck coming, I think, next week. Lance and I talked to him about John Michael Schmitz. He's the Minnesota Golden Gophers head coach, so make sure you check that out. And then, as I mentioned earlier in the show, I mean, I did literally about 54 interviews on Media Day with different players, and we've split them up by position, and they're going to be going 2 or 3 times a week. Everybody in each position group, day by day. They're short. They're only like 3 to 4 a pop, 3 to 4 minutes a pop in terms of the individual ones. But you put them all together, you got yourself a podcast. So make sure you go check that out. You can find it at giants.com/podcast, or go to the Giants mobile app, or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're on Apple Podcast, for this show, for Giants Huddle, for any of our programming, make sure you leave that 5-star positive review. It will really help us out. And as you all know, the 2023 NFL schedule is officially out, and single-game tickets are on sale now. Don't miss the Giants at MetLife Stadium this season. Visit giants.com/tickets to secure your seat today. Brian in Alabama. He's up next. Roll Tide, Brian.
Roll Tide. Hey, I love the show. Just wanted to pose a question to each of you. Have a little fun with the roster.
Sure.
I think most of us would say we're excited the roster this year has less holes than last year. But if each of you had the ability to improve 2 positions on offense and 2 positions on defense with not the specific names of players, but, hey, I want to shore up this position on offense, this on defense, one of the two positions each of you would identify, and I'll take it off there.
Thank you, Brian. I'm going to tighten it up, Lance. Give me one on each side, and then I'll give a different one on each side, and that'll be – otherwise we'll list every position.
Sure. Well, I've floated this out on previous shows. On defense, I would say the third pass rusher would be a position. So I'm going to be very specific. I'm not just going to give you a position group. I'm talking about you got Aziz, you got Kayvon, a third guy who is insurance in case one of those two goes down. And I think any team that is high up in the sack department normally has that third pass rusher that rotates in and gives you a respectable sack number. So that would be my defensive side.
I'll do my defense then, and then we'll jump to offense. Defensive line, I think you're really happy. That, to me, is the strongest position on the roster, so that's good. Corner is interesting. I really think the addition of Bobby McCain and his ability to play that slot spot and compete with Holmes and Flott, who are also going to be in the mix there, I think you have enough bodies there, and I think if Banks is what you think he is as a first-round pick and you have Adoree Jackson, you have two starters you can rely on outside. So you can always have more depth at corner, but I think I'm good enough at that spot now since you got Banks in the first round, so I'll slide that aside. So then I'm really down to safety and inside linebacker, right? And I just don't know Darian Beaver's health. You know, he thinks he's going to be ready to go at the start of camp. We'll see. Jared Davis, he's fine. But how much is that second linebacker going to be on the field? I'm going to go safety here, Lance. So they have some numbers at safety, right? Like Bobby McCain's done it, but again, I see him as more of a slot than a safety, but he can certainly do both. He's done both successfully. You know, Pinnock played a lot last year. Dane Belton's a young guy that they like. They drafted Javarius Owens, but
Nick McLeod now is moving
and
there too.
Yeah, great point. And Nick McLeod's moved to safety and done that. But you don't have that next sure thing that I guess McCain can kind of qualify there next to Xavier McKinney, where you know exactly what you got like you had with Julian Love last year. So I guess I go safety, but I think the depth on the defensive side of the ball is actually pretty strong, to be honest with you.
Well, they made an effort, I think, this offseason to address a variety of the positions. I think what you're getting at is you want to feel comfortable with that proven commodity at safety.
Yeah, and I feel like Wade wants to play more safeties than linebackers, and I think maybe that's why I picked safety. I just don't think he's going to run a bunch of these inside linebackers on the field a lot, but I think he could use 3 or 4 safeties.
Without a doubt.
So that's why I went safety. I think there's actually more players at safety than inside linebacker, but because of, he asked me to choose where I would bolster it. Yeah. So that's why I would bolster safety before I'd bolster inside linebacker.
Well, it seems where you're going is where I went, because I said third pass rusher. I think you're looking for the third safety.
Yeah.
And, maybe somewhat a degree the second guy, too, correct, because they don't have a Julian Love who had that versatility, but, that's what I think should be identified. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, it is a little bit more challenging to me because we've talked about, I think they made a concerted effort to bring in depth across the board, but if you wanted me to give you one spot, I probably would point to the offensive line just because there's some question marks still there in terms of who's going to start. So, for example, swing tackle, and I know Tyree Phillips comes to mind.
I think swing tackle's a spot I would have put a spotlight on, too.
So that would be the area. And then I'll also throw out, who is that backup guard / center that's the first man up who's maybe
could be Bredesen.
Also somebody that's going to start. But I guess my point is if Bredesen starts, John, okay, now you need somebody else to assume the Bredesen-esque role.
Hassenhauer, I guess, could be one of those guys.
Yes,
maybe.
Hassenhauer definitely has experience with the Steelers. Zudu, we haven't seen much at center in terms of games, okay, so he's a bit of a wild card. So, that's where I think the place to go is on that side of the ball.
I'm going to cheat. Because I know he said add a. He says, maybe I'm not cheating, but maybe I'm bending the rules a little bit. He said, where would you add a player at a position?
It was also improved, too, I think was the word he utilized.
Correct.
So I think this all applies.
And that's why I'm going to go with improve here. But I do think swing tackle is one spot between Parrott and Tyree Phillips, who's the swing. And Corey Cunningham's in that mix, too, right? He played a lot of that, exo tight end last year, too. I still think long-term, what would give this team a real big boost is to have a true number 1 wide receiver. And if I'm really targeting one thing as I'm building this roster out over the next year or two, that's what I'm trying to get. And even if it's not like a top tier, top 3-4 wide receiver in the game, the Jamar Chases, the Justin Jeffersons, the Tyreek Hills, the Devontae Adams, someone in that group. But can you get someone in the next group? Can you get Tyler Lockett level guy? Can you get a Amari Cooper level guy? Can you get a DK Metcalf level guy? Someone like that who, they don't have to be an all-pro, but is going to be in Pro Bowl consideration a wide receiver. If I was to add one thing to the offense that I think would make the biggest impact on the roster, I think it would be that.
Yeah. I mean, that's why it's going to be interesting to see is Darren Waller operating like a number one wide receiver this year.
I want Waller plus that guy.
No, I know you want Waller plus that
Yes.
guy, but what I'm saying is I think it'll be more interesting to see how the dynamics of the offense play out, where if Waller serves as the Travis Kelce type of player in Kansas City, and remember, Kansas City doesn't have a number one guy anymore with Tyreek Hill gone. Can that function, and can you utilize that long term? I think we got to see it first before maybe we take it up a notch with respect to the huge need. I mean, that's a nice luxury to have. I still think there's potential in this wide receiver group, as I voiced on numerous occasions. But yeah, of course, you'd love to know you could bank on going into every single game and you know exactly the level of production you're going to get out of one guy in particular. And right now, do they have that guy in the roster? No. They have potential, but there's nothing that's been solidified at this point.
Yeah, and look, that's hard to find now, too. I mean, it's just not something that is easily found in the NFL. These guys don't become free agents, number one wide receivers anymore. They do get traded, and they get drafted. So that's kind of how you have to go about getting them. And to get like that true number one, usually you have to pick pretty high. Now, not all the time. Like Justin Jefferson got picked later in the draft. Stephon Diggs got picked a little bit later in the draft. So you can find somebody end of the first round.
That's the best path to go, the draft.
I think that's what it's going to have to be. And this wasn't a great wide receiver class this year. I think next year's probably going to be a little bit better. You obviously have Marvin Harrison Jr. at the top. If he's not a top 7, 5, 4 pick in this draft, I think you'd ask, well, okay, he must have got hurt. I think I think that's got to be
or some other factor came up. Yeah,
correct. Something weird came up where he's not going to be that guy. But we'll see if anyone else can kind of step up and also be in that conversation next season.
It's interesting, John. On a related note, I'm bringing up Pro Football Focus's their top 10 ranked wide receivers from this past season. And if you just went through how did their respective teams acquire them,
it's all drafted trade.
It's a very interesting, I think, exercise to do. The Dolphins got Tyreek Hill, right? They had to trade for him. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Okay, here's a guy that was drafted and has developed nicely. Justin Jefferson, drafted. Devontae Adams, acquired by the Raiders.
Trade.
Stephon Diggs, acquired by the Buffalo Bills. A.J. Brown was traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. Cooper Kupp, drafted by the Rams. C.D. Lamb, drafted by the Cowboys. Keenan Allen was drafted by the Chargers, and he's lasts forever. And then Jamar Chase rounds out the group, drafted by the Bengals. So, you have one of two options. You either draft a guy and mold him into the star, or you got to give up draft assets and give him a new contract in order to bring up that top-notch guy.
They're too valuable. Teams don't let them leave. It's the way it is. Let's go to Ian in New Jersey. He's up next on Big Blue Kickoff Live. Hello, Ian. How are you?
I'm good. How are you guys
What's
doing?
up? Doing well.
So I got 3 quick questions, and I'll take it off air.
Sure.
First is Daniel Jones. Do you believe it's a possibility that he might be feeling more pressure this year than last year because now there's less room for excuses? Now he has Darren Waller. Now he has Paris Campbell, Jalen Hyatt, and eventually Sterling Shepard when he comes back, Wan'Dale Robinson, hopefully Saquon. So do you think it's a possibility that he feels more pressure because now there's less room for excuses? Second question is Saquon Barkley, do you believe there's a possibility that he kind of waits because the deadline is so far away? Do you think it's a possibility he waits for Dalvin Cook to get a contract from most likely Miami?
I'm not sure if that contract's going to help his case, Ian, to be honest with you. So he might not want to wait for him to get that contract.
I don't think Cook's contract's going to move the needle. I think, who's going to move the needle? Josh Jacobs. If Josh Jacobs gets a deal,
that could.
That changes things because Jacobs is in the same position as Saquon and is a huge weapon for his respective offense.
I'll be shocked if Dalvin Cook gets more than $7 or $8 million.
Yeah, I mean, well, look at the teams that are suitors.
They don't have a lot of space.
Who has a lot of money? And also he'd be going to a team where it's a backfield by committee as opposed to, he's coming in and being Saquon Barkley.
Even if he goes to a team like the Bills or the Chiefs, his brother's in Buffalo where
James
they
Cook.
spent a high draft pick on him, and the Chiefs had not
Pacheco
McKinnon.
and Jarek McKinnon.
McKinnon
and Pacheco. You're right.
So so Ian, I don't think the Cook thing's going to move the needle. What's number 3?
Number 3 is a couple weeks ago, Matt Araiza was proven innocent and they acquitted him of all of his charges or whatever. So do you think it's a possibility the Giants look his way, maybe as even a tryout, as maybe a little bit more security at punter? Because the stuff he's done, I think his first punt in the NFL was 80 yards in a preseason game. So do you think it's a possibility the Giants, try and get a legit? I don't want to bash anybody. Do you think it's a possibility they take a step up and reach for him?
I appreciate the call, man. Good stuff. It's a good question. Araiza has not been signed by any yet.
No, he did try out for the Jets, though, I believe.
Now, this is a rough situation for him, obviously. You get accused of something. They end up dropping the charges.
They did, yes. There's still a pending civil lawsuit that is playing out.
That's the thing. That's why he said proven innocent. I don't think that's really kind of. Well, bottom line is that there are no criminal charges.
No,
anymore.
The district attorney didn't find enough evidence to pursue charges,
right,
that's the best way to look at it.
And I think as people who are not private investigators or police, that's kind of what we have to look at. I don't know what the Giants think of him and whether or not they like to bring him in. I do know they like Jamie Gillen.
I think that's more. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, please,
I think
go
that's
ahead.
The question is more of how do they feel about Jamie Gillen? Right. I don't know if it's a matter of. Listen, you always do your due diligence, John, to try to bring in other players. But I think right now, if you ask the Giants, I think they feel good about moving forward with Gillen. So that's where I think the answer lies.
Yeah, and they haven't brought in another punter in the offseason to do it. Now, sometimes you will bring in somebody in the summer because these guys are kicking more, so you just want to take some stuff off of their legs. Now, Jamie Gillen and leg strength, that's never been an issue for him. He's still a younger guy, so I think that would be fine. But, have the Giants looked at him? I'm sure they have. I don't know what this front office thinks of him or how they evaluated him in the draft when he got picked a couple years ago.
I think every front office, I'm sure, is doing their homework. But, once again, I think if you're going to make a move also for a punter, keep in mind, it probably, to your point, would happen just as training camp would start.
Mm-hmm.
What's the purpose of bringing him in now? You're not doing any work. And I think Gillen can handle anything you get out of the punter in OTAs. And they also have the machines, too, that can help guys field punts. So if there's going to be a move like that, it would happen right as they report back for training camp.
Agree. All right, now the first question.
Yes.
This is going to sound maybe stupid. I don't think Daniel Jones feels pressure. He kind of just is such like a straight line dude. Like, I just don't get the sense that he's now thinking, but now, we got all these guys here. Now it had to be better. I guarantee, I don't want to be hyperbolic here, Lance, but, Daniel Jones was trying to save his NFL career last year. If Daniel Jones has a bad year last year, and he doesn't get re-signed, no one else is signing him as a starter. He's getting signed as a backup somewhere. Let's be honest, right? So, first of all, I don't think that's the way Daniel looks at it, so I don't think this is going to impact him at all. But just from a logical, personal perspective, dude, he knows what check he's cashed. He knows what the signing bonus was. He's gotten the most important contract any NFL player gets, a second contract. So, does he maybe feel some pressure to perform? Sure, but last year was the most important season for him in his career. No question about it.
Yeah, it was the crossroads of his career. I was going to take it a step further, John, and I was going to say, I think every quarterback that receives a contract feels some type of pressure.
Yeah, of course.
Right?
Uh-huh.
Because isn't somebody in the draft always coming up from behind and looking to replace you? Isn't every team also wondering, is the guy we have who we want to invest in moving forward, or do we want to go in a younger direction? Look at Zach Wilson, for example, not to get off topic. The Jets drafted him not too long ago, and they go out and they get Aaron Rodgers. So, even a rookie can't take for granted.
Josh Rosen, Kyler Murray, right?
So if a rookie who's on a rookie contract can't take for granted his job, you don't think that a veteran like Daniel Jones is not feeling the pressure coming just with the role and the job and the territory?
But I just think that's how he handles it every year regardless. I
don't think he's overwhelmingly thinking about it any different. But I guess what I'm getting at, John, by default, I think every quarterback has some feeling of pressure.
I think every NFL player does.
Because their job could be taken away from them in the blink of an eye.
Now, I think given the contract, it would be very difficult to take that job away from him very quickly.
Well, you're bringing the salary cap ramifications into play. So there's some security that comes.
I feel like there is some security there for Daniel, 100%. But no, I don't think... If what he was trying to get at, that he's going to be like, I need to be really good this year, and then he chokes under the pressure, I don't consider that to be an issue.
I don't think. And I think a lot of these guys are self-motivated.
And you have to be.
Yeah, whether they have the contract or not, they know they have to go out and perform at a specific level because, I mean, that's the fine line you walk between winning and losing. So I never get the feel that Daniel Jones or, even if they get something done with Saquon Barkley, that all of a sudden they go into this room and they say, all right, well, everything's done with my career. Now I'll sit back and sip on a pina colada.
Kind of a Mai
and just
Tai,
collect
please.
the paycheck. I don't get that feel from a lot of guys. And we have plenty of examples. You don't even have to look at the Giants. I mean, look across the NFL. Tons of guys have gotten paid and still perform at a very high level. I think
now, in
Daniel
fairness,
and Saquon fall under that.
He has been clubbing with Pearson a lot. So
well, that's why the Giants are doing everything they can to, get Pearson from negatively influencing the rest of the roster
now, in
and
fairness,
the staff overall.
And being completely transparent, those are probably the two people in this building I think are least likely to be clubbing, besides you maybe. So
yeah, you can
more of
put
a
me down
dive
on
bar guy.
yeah, exactly, right. And I imagine Daniel's probably more of a dive bar guy too. If I'm taking a guess here, that's just a guess.
Well,
I could be wrong.
On a related note, you know what it got me thinking of?
I want to hear this. Yes.
No. I'm going to bring it back to planet Earth, this conversation. I wasn't going to go.
That's too bad.
Yeah, I know. So be disappointed. No, when Brian Dable spoke to the media yesterday, if I'm correct, he was asked a question about, do you have to go to Daniel and say, over the next few weeks, take a step back?
Yeah, no.
And he goes, Daniel is built where he only has one mindset.
Correct.
And he's going to go into his room and study
And
24/7.
And that was the point I was trying to make, and I think you just made a lot better than I did, where that's why I don't think this outside stuff is going to affect his mindset or his approach.
Yeah, and any quarterback that does change their mindset, they're probably not going to be in the NFL for very long.
We always make this joke when people talk about, like bulletin board material during the week and heading into a playoff. Do you have added motivation for the playoff game? Yeah, because I really didn't care if I was going to win. But that guy said something mean about me.
That's it.
Now I care.
Now I can run through a brick wall.
Exactly.
Prior, I was only going to run through a paper wall.
Yeah,
now
correct.
I'm going to take it to a brick wall.
All right, Giant fans, take your fandom to the next level with a season ticket membership. Stay connected to the club all year round, not just on game days. Memberships are now available for the 2023 season. To learn more about all the exclusive member benefits, visit Giants.com/tickets. Limited inventory is available. And don't forget, the Giants' official connected TV streaming app, Giants TV, brings original video content and game highlights on demand and direct to Big Blue fans. Giants TV is free on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire TV, and the Giants mobile app. Tatino loves the free stuff, but I don't think he actually has any of those digital services, so I don't think he's going to be able to take advantage of that free download. He's going to have to just download it on his phone.
I don't think Tatino needs those digital services. I think he finds other ways by having somebody stand on the roof with an antenna and getting some type of a signal.
He actually does other things where...
I know. Well,
yes.
I'm not going to give away the skeletons in the closet.
No, I'm not doing that either.
Yes.
That's why I just said other things. Paul knows.
Other things. Everybody could use their imagination.
Hopefully, Paul's the only one that knows, or there could be trouble. Let's go to Lucas
never
in
know
New Jersey.
when Big
He's up
Brother
next.
is watching.
Hi, Lucas.
Hey guys, how you doing?
What's up?
You're right.
Good. I just was wondering. I saw an article come up about Yannick Ngakoue. He's got a new agent.
Yep.
He just
Drew
played with the
Rosenhaus.
Colts this last year.
Yep.
Yeah, and you know how Drew works quick, and this guy Yannick, 65 sacks. He's coming off two almost 10 sack years. Last year he had 9.5 with the Colts. I just wonder if I was Joe Shane. No offense, I think he's been doing a great job, and what do I know, right? But Leonard Williams has this big hit, and then you got Saquon, who's like, we all want that deal done. So if I were him, I'd probably let go of Leonard Williams, get Yannick, right? He played with Bobby Okereke last year, and pay Saquon and free up money by getting rid of Leonard Williams.
Lucas, I honestly, I think you have this backwards. Signing Saquon to a long-term contract lowers his cap hit. It doesn't raise it. They don't need to clear any money to sign Saquon Barkley. They have that money available. So there is nothing that you are going to do that's going to impact that. They have the money for Saquon because they have his cap hold on there for the franchise tag. And if they sign him to a long-term deal, the first year of that contract is going to have a lower cap number than the $10 million that he has on the franchise tag. So take that out of your mind.
True.
That has
True.
Saquon's contract has nothing to do with any of this. All right, now let's get to the first part of your question. I think Leonard Williams is a much better football player than Yannick Ngakoue. I think he's a better two-way player, and they also play different positions. Leonard Williams is a defensive tackle in a 3 technique, and Yannick Ngakoue is an edge rusher. I've also read in that same report that Ngakoue wants a multi-year contract. He doesn't want a 1-year deal. And if he's going to sign a multi-year contract, I promise you he's going to want to get paid on that multi-year contract, because you only lock in multiple years if you're getting a good amount of money. Otherwise, you're going to go to year to year and hope you blow up and get a big contract. So I think if you let Leonard go, which, again, I never thought that was a possibility this year. I still don't. There's a lot of dead money there. Whatever you sign Ngakoue to is going to get the cap number back up to whatever it was before, because the money you save on Leonard is what you're going to pay Ngakoue. There's going to be no extra money there anyway, and you're downgrading in terms of quality of player. And Leonard Williams starts for you, Ngakoue would be your 3rd edge rusher. He wouldn't even be your 1st or 2nd edge rusher with Ojulari and Thibodeau here. So that's the way I see it, Lance. Am I missing something there?
No, I would agree with you. Well, the other thing I was going to say is Ngakoue also doesn't know your system, and Leonard Williams does. Remember, you said Ngakoue plays with Bobby Okereke. Great. That wasn't Wink's system. That was Gus Bradley's system. So, that to me is irrelevant, because you also have plenty of guys that are familiar with one another currently on the defensive side of the ball. I would wholeheartedly agree with you. I think Leonard Williams is a better run stopper, and that's critical for a team that struggled against the run last season.
Better all-around player.
You would be taking a step back, you could argue, in terms of your run defense. And if the goal is to get rid of Leonard Williams to bring in Ngakoue, if you're only going to give him a 1-year deal because he's not content with a multi-year deal, then you're back to square one next year too. So you actually hurt yourself, not just this year, John. You hurt yourself, I would say, in the immediacy.
Now, in fairness,
the next few years.
Leonard's also a free agent.
No,
after
Leonard.
the year, too.
But once again,
Yes.
Leonard may be worthy of investing in again, if you'd like, compared to Ngakoue. After 1 year when his contract.
Yeah,
expires.
Lucas, and maybe your opinion on the players are different. That's fine, and please feel free to express that. But I think Leonard Williams is a better player, so I'm not going to cut a better player just to get a worse player on a lower cap number. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like Ngakoue, and if you could bring him in as a 3rd pass rusher, that's a heck of a luxury.
But
I would do that tomorrow.
But I'm not losing Leonard Williams.
No, I would not do that to sacrifice another player currently on the roster. I would do that, though, if the money and flexibility was present to bring him on top of what you already have.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, because Yannick's going to want probably around that $20 million ball.
Oh, he ain't getting that,
I just thought
I don't. $20 million a year. I don't think he's getting that. He signed I brought it up. He got, with the Raiders in 2021, he signed, and I don't know the guaranteed money. He was a 2-year, $26 million deal. So $13 million.
Yeah,
on average.
I would put him between 10 and 15. That's where I would put Ngakoue.
Got it. I do think we will. I'll take it off the air, but in my dream game scenario, I'm taking Leonard Williams out because we got Ashawn, we got depth and Roches, we got depth in the middle, right, to back up Snacks, and then you got Thibodeau and Aziz coming off the edge. It would be good to give them a player to kind of sub in and be equally as effective. But I hear you. It's not possible, probably.
No, it's all good, Lucas. Appreciate the call, man. Good stuff. And look, I just think Leonard is also a better pass rusher than Nacho and Ashawn. I think he brings something a little bit more to the table than those guys, too.
Yeah, you're not getting that sack production out of Nacho and Ashawn Robinson. Just look at their careers. And also, here's the other thing. Okay, so if we go down that hypothetical road, you get rid of Leonard Williams, Ashawn Robinson is now your guy. What happens if Ashawn, God forbid, gets hurt? He's no youngster. He's up there.
And he's had injury issues,
yeah.
too.
Okay, so now Nacho takes over for him. Now your depth is shot.
Now Ryder Anderson's your third guy.
Right. There's a cause and
Butler,
effect
right?
here. Yeah, so you have to take that into consideration. And once again, I'm with the caller. Would a 3rd pass rusher to complement Kayvon and Aziz make sense? Yes, sure. It goes back to, John, the conversation we had earlier in the program. What did I point to? I said 3rd pass rusher. But you've got to then say to yourself, in order to bring him in, do we hurt another position? You'd be hurting another position by bringing him in.
All right, let's wrap it up with Scott in New Mexico. Scotty.
Hi, guys. How you doing today?
What
up? One thing, John, you inferred with some of the wide receivers you were talking about, Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, they're all speed burners, but there was a guy I don't think you mentioned, which was really great, especially in the championship year, and that was Cooper Kupp.
I brought him up when we went over our top 10 list.
No,
okay.
And Scott, I agree. Cooper Kupp deserves to be in that conversation, no question.
Okay. My main points are this. The way I look at it, as far as the Giants are concerned, there's only one football, and there's a lot of guys who are going to get it. But if you're patterning your offense around the sort of the model of the Kansas City team, which I think Kafka is trying to do, Waller in his good years, he had I think 90 catches one year, and in another year I think he had over 100, maybe 105 or so. And if he's the focal point of the team, I had two questions. One is, why shouldn't the Giants, if the offensive line holds up, why shouldn't they be scoring 25 or 26 points a game? Because they have talent.
Because it's very hard. I mean, do you know offhand, Scott, how many teams scored 25 points a game last year?
Not offhand, no.
I will tell you. I will tell you in a second. I bet you it's less than 6.
Yeah, it's not necessarily easy from that standpoint, especially also when you take into consideration where they came from. I brought it up, John, if you want it. I got it here in front of me. Points per game last season, you had, 25's the cutoff, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
7.
7 teams. Yeah.
Okay.
7 teams.
But the Giants have personnel. They have people that can score. And also...
Well, Scott, I'm not trying to be a jerk here. Do you think the Giants have a top 10 wide receiver group?
With Waller, I mean, when you look at Kansas City, when they use Travis
have
Kelce,
Patrick Mahomes.
No, I'm not.
He might
I
be
realize
the best quarterback in the history of football.
I'm not arguing that point.
And a very
I'm
creative
not arguing
scheme, too.
that point.
And one of the top offensive lines in the league too. The
they
Chiefs'
have a better
line
offensive
is awesome.
line, true. But I'm just saying, with the personnel that they have, with Hodgins and then some of the other receivers that they have, and some of the ones that they're developing, I look at it that they can score. My second point, even if they don't get to that 25 or 26 point level, I wanted to ask the question of how many touches you think Saquon Barkley is going to get, because isn't it sort of tied into his contract as to how much he's asking for? Because I can't see him getting more than, say, 20 to 25 touches a game.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
That's a pretty good number.
I think somewhere from 16 to 20 carries and 2 to 4 catches a game, and you're at around 20 to 22 touches.
So if that's the scenario, is say he was asking for $14 million, that was the last number that I heard. Would the Giants look at that and say he's only getting 20 touches a game, and maybe he'll get 2 passes or something?
20 is a lot. I mean, 20 is more than every other player except Daniel Jones.
Well, I'm looking at it in regards to all the great backs like Nick Chubb and people like that, Derrick Henry, and so.
Well, no, that's the thing, Scott. That it ends there. Like that's it. Like there aren't any other 20 to 25 carries a game backs anymore.
Well, Pollard, if he's healthy, is going to get that many. I'm assuming.
Scott? They
25
have gone,
carries. I don't think
they have gone
carries.
out of their way not to give Tony Pollard that many carries a game so far in his career.
Well, I mean, to me, I think Christian McCaffrey is the guy we should be having the conversation about.
But even they rotate guys.
No, and that's my point.
Right?
No, but I'm saying I don't even think Derrick Henry and Nick Chubb are right comparisons because they're not as involved to me.
I hear
the
what
same
you're
way
saying.
Saquon in terms of the versatility.
Right.
If McCaffrey is the highest paid running back, Scott, then that's all you need to know.
Okay.
Right? I mean, Christian doesn't get 25 carries a game, especially with a San Francisco team now
Great point.
that has a variety of different backs. So if Christian's getting that type of money, then why is it crazy to think Saquon can't at least ask for that?
Okay. And that's basically, I was just trying to figure out that point and also why the Giants shouldn't be thought of as a good offensive team in regards to scoring points based on the fact that Waller's going to be the centerpiece. And because if he stays healthy, he had 2 phenomenal years where he was the guy, and they were throwing him left and right. And so with the red zone efficiency they have, I'm thinking there should be, and they were 5th, as I think I talked about on another show. Even though they didn't score a lot of points, they were there all the time. So that's why I was thinking they should be able to score a little bit more.
Well, Scott, you know it would be a good conversation to have. Yeah, and appreciate the call. I'd be curious, John, before we wrap up here, what the Raiders averaged in his 2 career years, just as a means of comparison.
What years were they?
Let's see. He had 2019 and 2020, back-to-back years. Let's see. In 2019, the Raiders averaged 19.6 points a game. Okay. And then in 2020, it got up to 27.1. So only one of the 2 seasons when Waller had his career years did they get over 25, which should just go to show you it's not so simple. You bring in the tight end, and then everything works its magic. Here's the other thing, and I think you were getting at this. Let's just real quickly look at the 7 teams last season that averaged 25 points per game. Okay, Kansas City, which is not a surprise. Buffalo.
Josh Allen.
And by the way, Buffalo is not an offense built around the tight end. They have wide receivers.
Stephon Diggs.
Okay, Philadelphia Eagles.
Jalen Hurts.
Dallas Cowboys.
Dak Prescott.
Detroit Lions.
All right, well,
okay, maybe
I think
an
that's
exception,
I
but
think that's something you can have a conversation
Amon
about.
Ross St. Brown is a star wide receiver we were talking about, and they also had a pretty good run game too. Let's not forget about that. And the Lions have
a good line.
You could argue they may have the best offensive line in
fact,
football.
all the teams you've listed so far have very good offensive lines.
San Francisco. Okay, well, they're very unique in terms of their run game, and then Cincinnati. Look at their receiving core too. I mean, Jamar Chase, company with Higgins. That is some group of teams that we just named. Is it possible? Sure, it's possible. But the Raiders, to me, is a good indication. Waller, one of his monster seasons, they averaged under 20 points a game. And the reason why I use that as an example is because if you noticed when Waller was on the Raiders, they didn't have star wide receivers. Okay?
No.
Until Devontae Adams came along, but that was last year. They had a complimentary group, a nice group of guys, not players that put fear in the eyes of the opposition.
And then Scott said, the Giants have a lot of red zone efficiency, but they did not get there as much as they needed to. That was the problem, right? They got when they got there, they were good at it, but they didn't get the ball down there enough. And of course, the big goal this year, and one of the things I wanted to mention with Brandon Brown, when he was asked about bringing in all the speed this offseason, he said, we need more explosive plays. And I don't want to keep pounding that to death here, but it's obvious. You score touchdowns with explosive plays. I mean, we've been through it a bajillion times, Lance, and we'll be through it again. That's how you score points in this league, and that's what the Giants are trying to do.
I'm just, real quickly, I'm looking up red zone in terms of opportunities. They had 49 possessions in the red zone last season, just to give you the volume-wise. Now, the Vikings, who they played in the playoffs.
So that's less than 3 per game.
Minnesota had 64.
There you go.
So,
big difference.
I don't have the entire list, but I have my chart from preparation for the playoff game, and that was the regular season total. 64 for Minnesota, 49 for the Giants.
Big difference.
Yeah. Huge difference.
That's almost a 30% difference.
Because do the average over the course of 17 games, yeah.
That's almost one full red zone possession more per game for Minnesota. And over the course of the year, that adds up.
100% it does.
Lance, good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we'll be back tomorrow for another episode of Big Blue Kickoff Live. Tomorrow it looks like
Paul and I believe,
you
right?
and Paul. That is correct. And then Paul and I will be on Friday. For Pearson, for Lance, I'm Schmeelk. We'll see you next time on Big Blue Kickoff Live.